Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for you movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy. That is my co-host, Rob Dunham.
Fresh out of work. Can't tell.
Still got the scrubs on, man. I like it.
This is the dedication that you can expect from us.
For sure.
We do the things we must so that we can do the things we love.
Yes, absolutely. This is true. We have an excellent show for you. We're going to do something a little bit different. We haven't done a ton of news stories lately. And so today's episode is going to be very heavy news based. We had CinemaCon over the last week, as well as just some general stories that we wanted to get to. So we're going to have a little bit more of newsy items on today's podcast, but it should be stuff that's fun and interesting. As well as, of course, we will cover our watch list. But as is generally the case, let's start with the box office update.
The box office depression update.
So the box office was overall this week amongst the top 10 films in the box office was down 37% this week. Not terribly surprising whenever you have a release that does super well and then a release, then you don't the next week. Yeah, that makes a difference. But Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, still finished at number one in its second week in the box office, taking in $31.2 million. Now, on the downside of this one, 61% drop off from week one to week two. So definitely on the high side there. So most of the people who wanted to see it saw it week one. And word of mouth did not save it for week two. Now, 31 million is nothing to sneeze at, considering I wouldn't have been shocked had that been its opening week box office debut. So the fact that after 2 weeks, it's at $134 million is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. So this film is doing well. That being said, you'd like after a, kind of a surprise, excellent first week that it would have carried that over a little bit into week two, and it really didn't from that standpoint.
I'm sure with Hollywood accounting, this movie has not made any money, though, considering how much it seemed like they were advertising it almost everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it had a huge advertising budget attached to it.
For sure. Number two this week was the new movie Monkey Man, $10.1 million. Number three, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire did $9 million. That is up to $88 million in its 3 weeks of release. Number four was another new entrant. The First Omen did $8.3 million. And number five, Kung Fu Panda 4 did $7.7 million. This film, in 5 weeks in the box office, is up to $165 million domestically. Thoughts on the box office results?
I don't really feel like there's too much surprising about it. I mean, the new ones aren't necessarily huge. Like even the First Omen. I mean, it's obviously a follow-up to The Omen. But it's not the Omen, although it's a classic movie, it's not like this established horror franchise where you have like 30 movies and like this huge audience for. And I actually went and saw this movie, and I think that what it made is about what I would expect based on the kind of movie it was.
Okay.
So, not super surprised to see the Godzilla drop off either. Like I said, I thought it was a very enjoyable movie and fun to watch, but it's not a movie that I would see people going out and telling their friends, like, you got to go watch this movie. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think the box office more often than not will reflect if the word of mouth is not strong on a movie from week one to week two.
Yeah.
And in opposite cases, if it is strong like Barbie or Oppenheimer, you'll see more people coming in. There'll be a smaller percentage drop off from week to week.
For sure. And I think we see standard. Monkey Man, not surprising given the type of film it was and the general subject matter. I think 10 million is pretty decent for that type of film. The downside for that one is it did have a decent amount of theaters. We saw a couple weeks ago I would say there's about 4,500 theaters in the country. Godzilla versus Kong was in 3,948 theaters, while Monkey Man was only in 3,229. So you have a difference of about 900 theaters there. Makes a difference when you're coming out. Now they do market them in there for averages, but yeah. So smaller release for Monkey Man, so not incredibly surprised with that result. Ghostbusters and Kung Fu keep chugging along. Still in the top 5, still making decent money considering their runs. Any of the thoughts on the box office from last week?
Nothing really sticks out to me out of the ordinary.
Okay. Now let's turn our attention to the box office releases for this week. So we have actually a number of films coming out this week. I would say headliners here would be 2. One of them would be Civil War. This is the Alex Garland film. It is Alex Garland, of course, director of Ex Machina, Annihilation, a couple of other films as well. But this is a journey across a dystopian future America, following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before the rebel factions descend on the White House. This one stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spahey, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Sonia Mizuno, Nick Offerman, Jesse Plemons. Big cast in this one.
Jesse Plemons, aka not Matt Damon.
Yes.
Even though it kind of looks like him, but it's not.
Yes. Another one we have out, Sting. Sting is a kind of a horror suspense movie. Sting spins the web of thrilling terror when a 12-year-old Charlotte's pet spider rapidly transforms into a giant flesh-eating monster, forcing the young girl to fight for her family's survival. So you kind of got a spider or monster movie with a girl, ironically named Charlotte.
I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard of this movie until right now.
Yeah. It is not in every theater. Another one is The Long Game. The Long Game is a film, and this is, by the way, sometimes I forget that maybe it'd be not a bad idea to put out the ratings on those. The first 2 are rated R. I usually don't, but this one is actually rated PG, The Long Game. And this is in 1956. J.B. Pena and his wife moved to a small town in Del Rio, Texas, partly for a job as a school superintendent, but mostly to fulfill his dream of joining a prestigious all-white Del Rio country club. When he gets rejected on the basis of skin color, he's devastated. But his world soon collides with a group of young Latino golf caddies who work at the country club. He is inspired by the handmade course the boys built to teach themselves the game. With little experience and fewer resources, JB convinces the boys to start their own high school golf team. This seems to me to be rather... I saw the trailer for this. It looks quite good, actually. And reminds me of, I don't know if you saw the movie McFarland.
This is exactly what movie I was thinking.
Yeah, it has some of those vibes to it. Very
Which was, I believe, about a cross country team on an Indian reservation.
Not an Indian reservation. They were similar to Latino field workers, kids.
Okay,
and nobody was giving them the time of day.
Yeah.
So that is The Long Game. There is another one called Arcadian. And this one is rated R as well. This is kind of action, horror, suspense, starring Nicolas Cage. In a near future, normal life on Earth has been decimated. Paul, Nicolas Cage, and his 2 sons have been living a half-life, tranquility by day, torment by night. Every night after the sun sets, they face unrelenting attacks from mysterious and violent evil. One day, when Thomas doesn't return home before sundown, Paul must leave the safety of their fortified farm to find him. A nightmarish battle ensues that forces the family to execute a desperate plan for survival. So, Quiet Place vibes here for a action horror thriller film. Arcadian. Another one is Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Yes.
I'll do my best.
Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead is a remake of a classic movie. In this case, it is rated R for drug use, language, sexual references. A 17-year-old Tanya Crandall's plans for a carefree summer are derailed when her stress to the limit mom takes off for a wellness retreat and puts Tanya and her 3 siblings in charge of a crotchety and racist old babysitter. The babysitter's sudden death leaves the kids short on cash and reluctant to pull mom prematurely out of her much-needed R&R. So Tanya is forced to get a job. Posing as an adult, she gets a gig as an executive assistant at a fashion company and is overnight thrust into the world of adulthood and parenting. This is, like I said, based on the 1991 classic movie. So you have a little bit of a Weekend at Bernie's vibe, a little bit of, house parent, type thing. So a number of movies out, as well as in some theaters, Shrek 2 is releasing for her 20th anniversary.
Shrek 2 is 20 years old.
Yeah. Think about that.
I'd rather not. Thank you.
Yeah. So lots of new stuff out there. Depending on what theaters, not all of these will be carried in all of the theaters, but you have a number of interesting entrants. What is your thoughts on this weekend's offerings?
The one that I'm most interested in seeing, and probably actually might go see as soon as tonight, is Arcadian, just because Nicolas Cage doing sci-fi fantasy horror things is it's not always good, but it's always interesting. Yes. I remember just a few years ago, the movie The Color Out of Space that he did was absolutely bizarre, bananas, off the wall fantasy horror genre. So I'm interested in seeing what this one is. It's got that element of like the kids are like young kids, and like that can lead to, more nerve-wracking, scarier things, especially being a dad and having kids of my own. Yeah. Putting myself in the place of having to deal with those kind of scenarios. I'm not necessarily super interested in anything else. I'm a little disappointed, maybe disappointed in myself, but also understanding of myself that I'm not interested in Civil War because I really like Alex Garland. Yeah. But to me, like watching the trailers, like it felt too close to real life and like near future to me. Like I'm already like anxious and stressed out about that. Yeah. Possibly happening in my country at some point, that I don't need to see a version of it potentially happening.
Yeah. I'm in a similar boat. The only reason I would go see this movie is because of Alex Garland. Yeah. Like, I talked about this a little bit when I did the spring preview, but like, it feels like something, and I actually read this in a review, it feels like something you would endure watching, not enjoy watching. Like it's unsettling, but not in the way of like we talked about Hotel Rwanda or we've talked about Schindler's List. It's not unsettling in a way that's like, okay, this happened and it's useful to understand it. Yeah. The only value I would think it has, if it would be to say like, hey, here's how bad this is. Don't let this happen. At the same time, do I really want to sit through a movie like that? And it doesn't. Yeah. I don't know that I would go see it just because I don't know that I don't want to engage in like 2 hours of that type of thing. I don't want to see the future of the US tearing itself apart on those levels, So I don't know that I am super interested in going to see Civil War, despite the fact that I do like Alex Garland a lot. The Long Game does interest me. It looks like a good like sports comedy, or not comedy, but a sports feel good, a triumph over adversity type story that I would be interested in.
And this one is based on a true. Is this one based on a true story?
I think it is. It didn't explicitly say, but the references seem to.
I mean, because it seems like a lot of these based on a true story, like we've got
based on Mustang Miracle by Humberto Garcia. So yes, this is this looks like this is based on a true story.
There's like there's something formulaic about it, but they're also often very good.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking this just in general, and we talked about this with some of M. Night's work, that just because something is really good and it's formulaic doesn't mean that it's less good.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Because if you took it out of the context of everything else and just appreciated it for what it was, you might appreciate it more. And I definitely think there's a space for that kind of movie. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who are interested in seeing that.
Yeah. Now, I have occasionally gone to movies similar to Arcadian. You know, I do like the Quiet Place movies, but they are more, I will go to see them when I feel like they really deserve going to see. Like, I saw Nope, for instance, because I thought like, okay, this seems like it's on the suspense side of horror, and this one may be closer to the suspense side of horror as well. So I'm more willing to engage with films like that, but I'm not sure this one has piqued my interest enough to be one of the ones I attend. So lots of stuff in the box office.
Yeah, I mean, even we who are like, we've got our ear to the ground or whatever, we're like trying to pay attention to what movies come out. Like Arcadian, I didn't know anything about. Like there are movies that even we don't know necessarily a whole lot about, or don't even know of, period. Before they come out. There's always something else. There's always something new coming out.
There is.
And there is so much variety. And I think that one thing that the streaming space has really opened up and encouraged studios to do, I think, is to explore different avenues, different genres, to be a little more risk-taking with things. And I like that. And I think that it's a benefit to the audience in general.
Nice. Okay. Well, that is your update on the box office. So plenty to go see in the theaters this week, including a story that we'll get to in a few minutes of a specialty showing if you want to check it out. But first, we're going to give you a bunch of news items that have come up over the last couple
breaking
weeks.
news.
Breaking news. Not so breaking.
Maybe broken news.
First off, Paramount reportedly has a tentative deal to merge with Skydance. Yeah, this is interesting. This is getting Paramount is getting closer to a deal to be sold to or merge with Skydance. Skydance, of course, is a studio. And this includes talks with Warner Brothers, Disney, or Warner Brothers Discovery, Apollo Global, and some of the talks have gone well. Discovery has have gone well. Others, like Warner Brothers Discovery, walked away from the possible merger with Paramount. Now, Bloomberg is reporting that a tentative deal is struck between Paramount and Skydance, a deal that would see the companies merge. Variety reported that Paramount Global has turned down an offer to sell to Apollo Global Management for $27 billion. So lots of stuff coming in. And according to the report, they're working on a deal that would give Skydance a 30-day window for exclusive talks while the two sides try to finalize a deal. So there's a lot of stuff going on here.
For those of you who don't necessarily have a concept of Skydance, you would have seen their wordmark and their interaction in production in the Mission Impossible series. It's probably the biggest one.
Yeah,
where you've seen them have an impact. They've also done some like Jack Reacher, just a lot of those mainline movies, I would say, when it comes to like the action. World War Z was another one. They were part of the new Star Trek movies. Top Gun Maverick, they were involved in.
Yeah, they're a big studio production.
Because I think a lot of people will hear the name Skydance and not like.
You might have a vague familiarity.
Paramount and Skydance are. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, they're very uneven. So it'd be like, why are they talking about? But Skydance is like a well-established company at this point that has been involved in a ton of stuff. And they were only, I was just looking at this. They were only founded back in 2006.
Wow.
So they have not been around that long, and they've made quite an impact since they came onto the scene.
It looks like any merger would need to be for the full Paramount company, which would include its TV networks, which includes Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, MTV, movie theaters, those sorts of things. It's interesting because this is coming at a time that's saying that the entertainment industry is facing difficult times with cable viewership declining. Majority of streamers are struggling to achieve profit. A lot of your streaming services are struggling to stay afloat, Paramount Plus being among them, the Paramount version of streaming. So it is interesting, and it will be interesting to see where this goes. But Paramount possibly getting bought out is big news.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that made me a little hesitant reading the article is like it's not very well written. And you kind of wonder sometimes like where people are getting their information from. But I also think where there's smoke, there's fire a lot of times when it comes to these kind of things. And I do know that they've been talking to a bunch of different places. So you wonder if this is one that will get pushed over the line and what it would look like. What kind of difference would it actually make?
Yeah.
Those things.
And I think the bleed off of streaming networks has been really difficult because they're kind of in a catch-22 in that you need a streaming service because of the disappearing of physical media. However, running a streaming service is ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
On top of which, you need to get people to sign up for it. So you need to have the content that draws people in order to get this. So you end up sinking more money to make sure you have the content. And it's becoming very difficult for a lot of streamers to maintain their viability.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what happens with Paramount. But keep your ears peeled for that one. And we will give you updates if a sale does.
Keep your eyes open and your ears peeled.
Yes.
That sounds painful.
That's right. Another story that comes up, Christopher Nolan movies are coming back to theaters. In fact, as of this podcast, you've already missed one. Sorry. Sort of.
Unacceptable.
You may have, depending on where your theaters are in your local area, you may not have missed one. But 5 Christopher Nolan movies are coming back in theaters over the next 5 weekends. So this weekend, they're in for Thursday and or Friday, depending on what your theaters are at each of these weeks. This weekend, it's The Dark Knight. And they're coming back to Regal.
Okay.
And they're coming back for $5.
Wow.
Yeah. So $5 Christopher Nolan movies on Thursday or Friday at Regal. Now, I looked in the local Lancaster Regal cinema, and they're doing these on Thursday afternoons. Yes, show
I can tell you
Thursday afternoons.
Looking at Regal in York, we have Thursday afternoons as well. Thursday at 12:25.
Yeah. So we're looking probably at Thursday afternoons, but depending on where your local Regal is, you might want to check that out, especially if you definitely want to go see these, because you're going to have to probably plan ahead for it. But $5 releases this week, it's The Dark Knight. Next week, it's Interstellar on the 17th and 18th. The following week on April 24th/25th, Inception. And May 1st and 2nd, Insomnia. Surprised that's
throwback.
Throwback. Yes.
That's his first movie, isn't it?
It's not his first movie. It was his first bigger budget movie, but this is not one he wrote. It's one he directed, but it's not one he wrote. And May 8th and 9th, Dunkirk comes back. So 5 possibilities for seeing Christopher Nolan movies. I'm already planning on at least Interstellar and Inception, and we will see from there. It would be so cool to see Interstellar back in theaters again. I've wanted to see that one, and Inception's just awesome. So Regal Cinemas, $5, probably in the local area Thursday afternoons. So
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
No, I feel a cold for some time next Thursday at around noon.
I know. These colds, man, you got to watch out for them. They just sneak up on you.
Anyone associated with my work who's watching this podcast, that was a joke.
Sort of. But if he's not there, I don't know.
plausible deniability, Ryan.
Plausible deniability. All right, so make sure you make a plan to go see Christopher Nolan movies back in theaters over the next few weeks. Now we get to some of the stuff that came out from CinemaCon. Some of it's news dumps, some of it's releases, trailers, forums, anything like this. Lots of interesting stuff came out of CinemaCon. We're not going to remotely get to all of it, but a couple things did stand out. We got our first trailer for Joker, Folie, deux. And it accompanied a little bit of updates as well. They did confirm that while music will be a very big part of it, it will not be a full-on musical like was possibly speculated when this originally released. Mm-hmm. So lots of music, will have plenty of music, but will not be a full-on musical. So I wonder if we're entering kind of La La Land territory with that.
I was getting... So do you want to say more about this?
So yes, we're going to talk about the trailer now. So the first trailer dropped, and so we're going to talk about the trailer.
Kind of the vibe I got from the trailer was, if you have not seen the first Joker movie, there is a scene where he is by himself in a bathroom and opera music is playing, and he's like doing his thing, and I kind of got like that vibe from this whole trailer. Essentially, I think my interpretation of the music scenes, how they present in the trailer at least, is that these are going to be like fantasy scenarios and like shared fantasy experiences between Harley and Fleck in their minds, basically. Yeah. And I could see that, like, that does have a little La La Land feel to it. Some other movies have done similar things.
Yeah.
But I could see it being really effective that way. So we'll have to see, but that's the vibe I get. It's not going to be like they're not actually going to be on the stage somewhere. Like they're going to be like, it did seem like a shared hallucination.
The mentally ill musings of two incarcerated mental patients. Definitely seems like they're going to hit that vibe pretty hard. I'm interested in this movie. I still have my same reaction to Joker originally. It's like, it's a very well done movie, and I don't know if I like it.
Yes,
because it was disturbing on a number of levels.
On a scale from, this is not fair because this is the first trailer and we've really only heard anything about it, but I don't care because this is a podcast and we get to ask each other hard questions.
Yes.
And, on a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to go see this movie?
Probably a 9. I will probably go see it. Even though I'm glad I saw the Joker, but like, I don't own the Joker, for instance. Yeah. Like, it's not going to be a major part of my collection because I just think it's almost gratuitously disturbing, you know? And I don't know if, I just didn't know if it was redeeming enough. If that was redeeming enough to do that. That being said, I am curious as to where they take this from here.
Yeah, there's I think in a lot of ways in the first movie there was nothing to take the edge off his character.
Yeah.
And I think that this could take the edge off his character a little bit. Not that it will make him any less disturbing or terrifying, but I think adding Harley into the equation might change how he acts in certain scenarios, and it just adds another voice to things. Because I think, and again, this is based on just the trailer, based on the writing of the first and my own conjecture, that I think she'll have a whole bunch of her own craziness going on.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's going to be exactly like his, and there's going to be some meshing and there's going to be some conflict in it. I feel like. So I think potentially it could end up being a better movie.
It's got potential. Yes, I agree. It's got potential. Very similar cinematic vibes to the first movie. You were definitely
bleak and washed out.
Yes.
Yeah, but still, like, despite that, the first movie, although it was bleak and washed out, it made the colors that they chose to use have more effect in some ways. And I felt, and like the grand like cityscapes, like I think of the like the elevated train going down the track towards the end of the movie, and some of the stairs
that
scene,
famous
and
stairwell
some of the
that's
other
just
stuff.
took off
Like
after that.
it
Yeah.
really like they built something iconic out of some of those moments.
And I think you're going to get similar. I don't know if you picked up on this, but that scene at the very end of the trailer where they're like talking between the glass of like like a jail interview room or whatever, and she just draws like a lipstick smile on the glass, and then the way they shoot it with him turning, and it centers it over his mouth, and then him smiling viciously, and that that was extremely well done.
I mean, and that definitely calls back some of the Why So Serious vibes
for
Heath Ledger too.
Yeah.
And the Joker.
So definitely check out the trailer and see if you're interested in this particular film. I think if you really hated the first one, I don't think you're going to get a vastly different experience for this one, but there it is. All right. Next announced the Dune Part 2 release dates for ownership and streaming and all those sorts of things were released this past week. The first up will be availability for digital ownership and rental the 16th. So next week, you will get a chance to digitally own or rent this, and early ownership will cost you about $29.99, and you can rent on pay-per-view on demand for $24.99. So just go ahead and buy the movie.
I mean, there is a calculus here that if you are a family of two, and you don't want to go out and spend the money on theater tickets, potentially a babysitter, food, all these things. I mean, it make a price point of $25, I guess, makes sense if you're in that scenario. But I've made it a point to not be in that scenario. Like I go to the actual movie. But I could see where there are some people who would take advantage of that. Yeah,
one of the guys on one of my welcome team guys at church, like he's like, I don't want to go to theaters, I'll just buy the movies. And that's what he does. He just buys whatever movie he wants, and then he's got a massive collection. He watches them at home. So now the option to rent or buy will be available to you through Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, Fandango, Home, and others. Now, if you are still a physical media type, I still prefer to, if or when I can, to own them, the physical media. That's why they can't snatch it out of my grasp like they do with so many other things.
However, we will not be able to go buy this movie at Best Buy.
We will not. Best Buy just done. With all selling of movies.
So depressing.
It is really depressing. Now I don't have any more reason to go to Best Buy on a regular day. So shame on you guys. But if you are holding out for the physical media for Dune Part 2, it will be available on 4K, Blu-ray, DVD on May 14th. So they're making you wait like almost a month for the physical copy. It will have a number of other special features in it. Which is always one of the advantages of owning these movies as opposed to streaming them. It's all the extra content you get with it. There's also a premium digital ownership option, which will include a bunch of other special features as well. It looks like the movie, they're just commenting on the movie. It's made $665 million globally. So the movie has been a monster.
This is how much the landscape has changed with access to movies, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we are like, I don't know about you, but my initial reaction when I saw that the physical version would not be out until May 14th and the digital version was like already going to be out next week. But like, I was a little annoyed. This movie didn't come out until March 1st. And we're talking about owning a physical copy of it in our hands 2 months after it released in the theater.
Yeah, it's still in theaters.
Like the universe of accessibility and availability to own a movie has changed.
Yes,
just
dramatically.
It's insane how much,
because it used to be 6 to 8 months after it comes in theaters before you could get it. It's insane how crazy this is in terms of how quickly you can get it. So April 19th if you're the digital buy or rent type, and May 14th if you are the physical media type.
And we don't shame whatever kind of media you prefer.
No, that is your media choice is up to you. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Insert disc here.
So now we got one more news-ish item, and it's a little bit more from the rumor category, but I think this rumor has a little bit more teeth to it than some of the other rumors. There's a rumor about the new James Bond, and the rumor is Aaron Taylor Johnson. Aaron Taylor Johnson. I know him mostly from his role in Bullet Train. He's been in other films. Mm-hmm. He's in another film coming up here. In the next, he's in, now I'm blanking on which one he's in. That's coming up in the next like week or two. Oh, he's in, I think he's in Furiosa, maybe.
That sounds correct to me.
Yeah.
But and some of you might know him. The movie's a little older now, but 2010, the movie that kind of like propelled him into the spotlight is Kick-Ass.
Yes,
because he was the main good/bad guy protagonist.
Yes,
of that movie as a younger guy. Obviously,
yeah.
I mean, now he's 14 years older, so quite a difference. He was a younger guy back then, but I liked his performance in Bullet Train too. I think there's possible potential there. One thing I'll say is that I don't think a lot of people were necessarily like going crazy bananas thrilled when Daniel Craig was given the role. He was not the name he is now when he started as James Bond.
I think they look for that. I think they generally look for that. Like, who is not an unknown actor, but an actor who we can elevate, who's got a lot of talent, who needs a bigger platform. That way Bond can be kind of seen as helping to create the person, as opposed to that actor lending their talents to Bond.
I mean, Daniel Craig and Pierce Brosnan, the last two James Bonds, if you ask 100 people, what does this actor do? I guarantee you for each one of them, you're at least 70 of those people are telling you James Bond. For sure. Now, in every instance, they're not unknown actors. They've all been in other movies. They've all been in relatively big movies. Pierce Brosnan was in, Mrs. Doubtfire, for instance, amongst others. Daniel Craig was in a number of other movies, including like Tomb Raider was in that. A Kid in King Arthur's Court.
Yes, A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Yeah, so I actually think it's kind of an inspired choice. Aaron Taylor Johnson, to me, in particular, I think the role of Bullet Train could give you a little bit of an indication of what he can bring to Bond, because it's a little bit more of an action movie. He's supposed to have a little bit more style and flair in this one, and you can see, I can see it. I can absolutely see it, and I think he brings a physicality very similar to how Daniel Craig did. I think he has a little bit more possibility in terms of like witty dialogue possibilities. I think his flow, his language flow, and the way he speaks would yield to some really fun James Bond lines and dialogue. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities there. Now, I must also say, these are at this point rumors, but they're rumors that are strong enough that they've had to ask the studio about the rumors. He's been asked directly in interviews about this, and he has not denied it. The studio somewhat denied it, but that's more like, we don't want this getting out. So it is by no means certain that he is going to be the next Bond. However, this is the farthest along and the deepest any of these rumors have gotten since the search for the new Bond has come underway. If you have not seen Bullet Train, you need to watch it to understand the joke I'm about to make, but I really hope that Aaron Taylor Johnson brings his Silence the Tank Engine stickers. I don't know. He might end up being a diesel.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: out of the people, including Aaron Taylor Johnson, that we've seen rumored for this. What's your ideal? Is Aaron Taylor Johnson your ideal based on the names that we have seen suggested?
I think he is. I think he brings the most potential. Now, some of these guys like Damson Idris, I'm just not familiar with enough. I don't know enough about him to be able to say whether or not he's going to be worthy along those lines. It's hard for me seeing one of the other actors is James Norton. It's hard for me to see him going from like Little Women to James Bond, but it's possible. But based on the ones I see that I have some familiarity with, I like that choice.
I think that based on what we have seen, it's probably the best suggested so far. I do think that both Henry Cavill and Idris Elba have the panache about them to be able to carry off the character well.
Yeah, I'm
not sure, due to age for Idris, that he would have staying power in the role necessarily. And Henry Cavill, I don't know if people would accept him.
I think
as the character, but
I think his profile is too big.
Yeah,
and I think people already have their impressions of Henry Cavill. Like they already know who he is. Like he's had some good films. He's had some films that haven't done so well. I would find it hard to believe that they would take a chance on an actor who is a known quantity, but not a sure thing. A known enough quantity, but not a sure thing. So that's why I think it won't end up being Henry Cavill. Because if you're going to go with a known actor who everybody knows, you'd want it to be someone who's going to guarantee you that people are going to come see him. I don't think you can get that with Henry Cavill.
Tom Cruise as James Bond. You're first.
On the flip
that's
side,
an impossible mission.
Yes. Yeah. They want somebody who's good enough that they have, like, people have at least heard of them a little bit.
Yeah.
So not just bringing someone out of the blue. So I would not be surprised if that's who it ends up being. And I think that would be a good choice. All right. So now let's move to our discussion topic. And our discussion topic for today centers around another topic that came up at CinemaCon. And that is what studios and theaters and executives, how do you bring people back to the theater is basically, I mean, how do you bring people back to the theater? What do we need to do to get people back in? So there was kind of a forum discussion on some of these ideas, and they had some interesting takes on this. And I thought we'd kick around what we thought about some of their thoughts and possibly continuing with some of our own. What did you make of this discussion? Was there any ideas or any things that they said that stuck out to you from reading it?
The main thing that stuck out to me is I don't know if they I still feel like they don't get it.
Yeah.
Like the specific things they're pointing out, like I'm not like, oh yeah, that's definitely something that would make me want to go to the theater more. The one example, they said that during the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem movie, the one theater was piping in smells of pizza into the theater as the movie was happening. And to me, that just is, potential riot inducing.
Yeah.
If you make me smell pizza and don't allow me to have pizza, there's going to be a problem. Probably make you want to not come back to the theater. It's difficult, I think, to actually find and target things that are actually going to universally and regularly bring people back into the theater, because I just think sometimes you can't adjudicate for things like Barbie and Oppenheimer happening. They're just going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to be able to force those kind of situations to happen.
Yeah, and they're trying to break down the barriers here of like, okay, how can studios work with movie theaters? How can, executives work on this stuff to make them things? I mean, I think one thing that they said that came out in this that I thought was reasonably accurate is, asking the question, what is it that money can't buy?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea that I'm part of this event and you're not. Now, I don't know that the you're not part really needs to be there, but that it's an event. Like what is it that will draw people back? Making things events, making it an event, making it a must go see, making it a must go, not only with me, but with my friends, something that making a must go. I think that is absolutely something that can make it happen. There was another idea that one of the studios had started doing, I think over the pandemic, that they just kind of continued on, and that was having an actual like usher introduce the movie before it was started, give you a little bit of information about the director, give you some things to look for, those type of things, kind of like make it more of a presentation, that more of the feel of like you're getting something extra by going to the movie.
Yeah.
Right. We see sometimes where you've seen, like, if you're there like the first week or something, a couple of the stars will have like a little recorded video. Hey, thanks for coming out to see the movie.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
I mean, for me, my favorite experience when I go to a movie theater and interact with employees, like you deal with all kinds of different people who are, some are just high school kids just there to make just a tiny bit of money.
Yeah.
Some are retired people who are just looking for something to do. Some people, it's just their job. And my favorite experiences are when someone will ask me, hey, what are you going to see? And then if I say something, then they respond and say, oh yeah, this, will be, you'll really like this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like there are some people like that.
Yeah.
But I think the overwhelming majority of people working in the theater aren't like that.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of them, they're like, I don't want to go see movies. Like I've been working here all day.
I can trace. I mean, I was always into movies, but I can trace like my escalation of my movie addiction to the year I worked in a movie theater, and I got to go to movies for free. And I would also on my break get to like grab popcorn and sit in the movie for 15 minutes and decide whether I want to see the rest of it or not. So I can trace it from being an employee at a movie theater. But that's always like that idea of like, what is the extra? What is the extra we can provide? What can we do? What can you do to make the experience better? And there's ways where I think studios can help theaters on this avenue. I remember it was the Boondock Saints. I think it was an anniversary showing, maybe 5 or 10 year anniversary showing or something like this. They put it back in theaters. It was one of those like Fathom event type things where it's back in theaters for one day. And they had like a 10-minute interview with the director ahead of time, asking him about the film and like all the stuff that has happened, since the film was released and its popularity, and, talk to him about like what other projects, is there something else coming, anything like that. And I remember going with a couple of people who'd never seen the movie before. They were like, just based on the reactions and how everyone was talking about stuff, they're like, this guy's crazy. And I'm like, oh, you haven't seen anything yet. You have not seen this movie. You've never. But that was an experience. And I still remember that. Like, are there ways that studios can provide some of that stuff? Tom Cruise is known for doing stuff like this on his own, in addition to like the massive, crazy premieres that they launch. But he'll show up at random theaters on opening night and just high five the people who show up. If you go to a Tom Cruise movie, there's a chance Tom Cruise is actually going to be at your theater on opening night. So things like that can work. There was a thing like there where another exhibitor tie-ins for studio movies include a 5-song karaoke at multiplexes for Bob Marley, One Love. Like, it's a song featuring music, very popular music that everybody knows. Why not have some karaoke involved in it? Like, those are cool things. Those are some decent ideas. You got to experiment with this, but like figure out what to do. But I mean, I like that they're thinking like this. Hey, what can we do? I don't think that they've really come down to what will actually work and won't work yet. I don't think, I still think they got a long ways to go until they have a handle on the experience and trying to make it work for everybody. So what let's give some more suggestions. What do you think? What would be the drivers for you? What do you think needs to be done between studios and theaters to be able to help people get back to the box office?
One thing that Regal does, if you're a member of like the unlimited thing or just a rewards thing, is oftentimes they'll give you like extra points if you go to a certain movie. Sometimes they'll even give you like an option to own the movie digitally later if you go to like a certain movie,
or for certain movies that let you
movies.
do a free upgrade to like IMAX or bring a friend.
So I think if they were like if they were a little more transparent or clear about those kind of things, I think that might
it can be really hard to figure out the details.
Some people interested in coming in.
Yeah.
I understand like they're constantly doing things, so it's always changing. But if you just had just like one digital board in the theater or something showing like these are the things that are happening right now with the rewards, like these are the extra things you can get. So come back because you'll get these other things. I think that might be helpful towards people.
For sure. Two things that I can think of. One is from the studio side. One, just flat out produce better movies. Produce better movies. Produce movies people, the average person actually wants to go to see. Greenlight films that people actually want to see. Films that are entertaining, films that are engaging. Give people a variety of options. And stop getting so involved in nonsense and just make better movies. Like that's the first thing you can do is, it's very similar to like when you're talking about a team that's struggling and you can say, well, if we had the coaching here or if we had, this different technique or playground, sometimes you just need better players. And I think one of the big things right here is we've talked about it. The studios just aren't producing as many good films. And you don't produce as many good films, people don't want to go see it. So I think there is a sense in which Hollywood has lost the trust of the movie-going audience. Get it back with better movies. The second thing I think from the studio standpoint is, or from not the studio standpoint, from the theater standpoint is, I know you downsize everything. Pandemic, you came back with less staff, you came back with less things, and every time you go in there, it feels like less of an experience because there's nobody around, including the employees. But one thing is like do something from a hospitality standpoint. I was just thinking this the other day. It's like I miss going to the ticket booth, and getting a ticket from the ticket booth, as opposed to like going to the concession counter and then telling them what I'm getting and my ticket along with that, or touching the screen. I just miss the ticket booth. Even though I'm fine, checking out on the screen and doing all that, it's fine, but give me a ticket booth on some weekends or something like that. Have people to welcome you, have people to greet you, offer deals or offer special fun things at times. Themes, get themes going. Also, just make sure your theaters are clean and your seats work and your stuff is upgraded and updated. Like that's real basic. Like the Regal in Lancaster has, when you go to check out on the screen to tell which seat you're sitting at, they have a special category for broken seats. So they went so far as to program into their system which theaters are broken, which seats are broken, but they didn't fix them. Just fix them. When I go to a seat, I don't want it to be cracked. I want it to work properly. Like, just make sure your theater is a place where people want to be. And it's not just like a second run theater, but with regular movies. Do that. All right. You got anything else on that?
Echo all that.
Yes. All right. So let's wrap up with our watch list. Movies that we've watched over the last week and what we thought about. Rob, what'd you watch?
So I saw The First Omen in the theater.
Okay.
I thought it was very good and surprisingly cinematic. I was not expecting the level of cinematography in the movie or just overall filmmaking in a way that made for a very unsettled atmosphere. Some of those choices that were done stylistically with camera shots and angles, some really trippy drone shots they did of Rome, and the soundtrack too was just really well executed and unnerving. And I actually found it to be one of the scary movies I've seen in a while, and I think the main reason was the combination of all those things had you on edge the whole movie, like you weren't sure what was going to happen next. And I think that's often scarier than what actually happens.
Yeah.
I also saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, okay.
So this is part of a personal thing, a journey I'm embarking on. By May 10th, I want to watch all 9 of the Planet of the Apes movies in chronological order.
The new one actually looks interesting to me. I've never been particularly intrigued by them, and I don't think I've seen any of the new ones. So I'm contemplating I'm not going back to the 70s ones. I'm just
right.
I'm not. But
so the three most recent ones actually all take place before the ones that came out in the 70s.
Okay.
Because the ones in the 70s are based on the world where it's already the apes rule everything. So the new ones are tracing the journey through that whole process.
Okay.
It starts out with one ape who can talk, Caesar, and then goes on from there. And in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, there's a really good scene in which he talks for the first time, because the whole time you've only been hearing them making monkey noises and like expressing their dissatisfaction that way, and the guard is telling him to do something. The human guard is telling him to do something, and he just yells no. And it's kind of like you can't tell if he's like, at first you're like, did he just make another noise, or did he actually say the word no? And then when you realize he actually said the word no, it's just like, oh. Things just changed.
Yeah.
Things just massively changed. And even in this, I'm on the second one now. Even in the second one, there's a lot of like, they are communicating in sign language, because a lot of primates know how to communicate in sign language. So there's a lot of that going on, but they're also starting to slowly, like, more actual words are being added in, all based on the fact that these animals were given advanced Alzheimer's drug, which actually was detrimental and deathly to humans. In fact, it creates a plague that eradicates most of humanity. But what it does for the primates is to hyperly increase their intelligence. And so they're able to start talking with each other, which is really kind of fascinating to see that progression. And I have not seen any of the old ones, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. And then the Tim Burton one is kind of out of space of all of them, because it is kind of the story. It's kind of like a remake of the original one.
Okay. But
with some slightly different twists, especially at the end. The original one I actually saw in the theater.
Okay.
Mark Wahlberg in the original, directed by Tim Burton.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember a whole lot of it seeing in the theater. I just remember I went to see it because I was like, ooh, Planet of the Apes.
What year did that come out?
I know that name.
Do you remember?
It was either late 90s or early 2000s.
That sounds vaguely familiar. So I guess there maybe is a chance that I've seen that one, but I don't remember anything about it.
Burton. It came out in 2001.
Okay. So there's a chance I maybe saw that.
Yeah, it came out in 2001, starring Mark Wahlberg, and you'll be shocked to know Helena Bonham Carter as a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
Tim Roth was also in it. Michael Clark Duncan was in it. Paul Giamatti was in it.
It does sound familiar.
They were all like actors voicing the
but that's primates. Probably one that I would not have seen since I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, but I very much remember seeing that in theater. And then the other movie I watched was the new Disney movie Wish, which I thought was perfectly okay. I think it was spectacular by any stretch, but it was good, and it kind of built on the legacy of just the history of Disney animation, and did some interesting things with the animation style. This is slightly different than something I'd seen before. So
yeah,
I liked it. My kids really liked it. So it was good.
Nice. I watched Now You See Me 1 and 2 as part of the weekly movie challenge, to watch a movie about a prank or a joke or something in line with April Fools. What I would say is I've watched Now You See Me occasionally here and there. I still think it's a fun, interesting movie. The second one is not nearly as good. There's the one thing I would say about the first movie. I feel like there are moments that are anticlimactic. Like, they have 3 or 4 different, like, big, shows, as it were. And the last one is the least interesting which is really not the way it should be. Mm-hmm. The last one is the least interesting. So there's moments that end up being anticlimactic in that one where I don't feel like they got rid of all their good stuff early, and then later in the film they didn't have anything better to go back to. The second one, I just think there was one in particular early in the movie. There's a scene where they're trying to steal a microchip for Daniel Radcliffe. Yeah, the Harry Potter guy. And so they attach it to a playing card, and they're just doing playing card tricks, like throwing cards. And it's so long, so poorly CGI'd, and like so like out of reality. Just like, all right, like you guys are you're pushing it too far here. It's going a little too far. And that's kind of, it just didn't work as well in the second film as it did in the first film.
I haven't seen it in a little while, so.
Yeah. The new movie I saw, I did go see Monkey Man. And what I would say about Monkey Man is the action sequences were good to very good. And the cinematography in those, lots of steady cam, or not steady cam, handheld cam, lots of stuff that looked like a little bit like it was a merger of some Bourne styling with some John Wick styling, some very interesting angles, very interesting camera positions, and the way they directed it. So I think on the action sequences, Dev Patel did a great job. The rest of the film disappointed me a little bit. I thought it was going to be heavy into action and we'll fill in the story around the sides. It was far more story than I was anticipating. However, it was far more stories about Indian politics. You have a guru over here who's scheming people, who's, kind of doing political power stuff. You've got another group you have over here, there's some like he goes and spends time with a bunch of like outcast trans men at one point. And I'm just like on top of that, in my estimation, like they tell you the legend of the Monkey Man at the beginning, so you're familiar with it. If you knew nothing about it, it would not make a difference in the film. Which, considering the film is called Monkey Man, and they set that up as the premise, it does not impact the film whatsoever, which I think is, so I would say it was okay, but I was a little disappointed because I thought it was going to be better than what it ended up being. So that's my thoughts on it. But I mean, there were very good and interesting moments within it, but it just like the Indian political stuff just got a little bit too out there for me, and too much of it was wrapped up into it. Okay. Well, that is the show. Thank you everyone for tuning into Film for Fans, and make sure you go to filmforfans.com, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, send us comments, all that good stuff. Until next time, enjoy the movies.